It's the people's voice with the conservative commentator, Adam Stevenson. How you doing, sir?
Good evening, James. How are you? Did you have a good
Very
week?
well. I had a fantastic week.
That's good.
Business is good, growing, fighting for market share. Excited to have the People's Voice fire its show back up with TVU, and so
Yeah,
we
well,
about 6 months.
yeah, about 6 months. I had some personal things going on in my life that I had to take care of, and it was just too much on my plate for a little while.
And you've been keeping your finger on things, though. You know what's going on.
Oh yeah, things are going pretty good in my life right now, and the political world is just out of control.
Where
Right,
where do you where do you start?
all
Where do you
kinds of
start?
things going on, both abroad and locally, both here in Alberta and Ontario and Saskatchewan and BC and other provinces and stuff. There's tons of local news right now. Tons of local news that would make good subjects to talk about. One of them is what happened at the Strathcona High School. Apparently, a group of kids from there who were white got together and wanted to make a white alliance, claiming that there was white racism against them, and uh, and the media and the school board were all over it, saying it was racist, and the police are doing an investigation. The hate crimes unit is doing an investigation to it. It's I don't know. And the other subject is what's happening in Edmonton with religious institutions and churches. We're seeing churches being put under threat of being fined. Pastor James Coates from the Grace Life Community Church here in Edmonton was recently arrested. He was taken away in handcuffs and ankle cuffs, and he's been put into jail. He has not been released, and his wife and kids have not been allowed to see him. And like I was saying on other shows, these kinds of things are leading us down that path towards a communist, totalitarian type of state where people are telling you how to think, how to live your life, how to exercise your religious freedoms, and that kind of thing, and what sort of opinions are acceptable to be espoused without having an investigation against you by the police, even if you're a kid in high school. And I think it's just crazy that these kids are now probably living in fear because they're under police investigation for saying the wrong thing. The school board is calling them racists and putting them in danger from other children in the high schools. They're being smeared by the media and their teachers, and the chairman of Edmonton Public Schools has said that this is a racist, horrible attack and white supremacy and rah, 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 essentially proving that there is white racism happening in the Edmonton public school system, because Black student alliances are okay, right? Um, Gay student alliances are okay, but white student alliances are bad. Now, doesn't that sound kind of racist? All these other groups, it's okay to have a Black student alliance, a gay student alliance, but it's not okay to
It,
have a white student alliance, and that sounds pretty racist to me. Basically, proving the point of what these kids were saying in the first place, is that this kind of racism they're feeling is being projected towards them in school, and then the school board shuns them for it, essentially proving what they were saying, because it's okay to have an alliance from any other ethnic background, but if you're from a European background, then that's a problem, right? I don't know. Maybe they should have called it the European Student Alliance and it would have been okay, right?
Well, and it's indicative of our time. The as and just to provide a little bit of historical context, like before Canada was multiracial,
Hmm.
there was divisions amongst the clans of white people, right? So not
Yeah,
all
that's
not
true.
all white people were accepted in
Yeah.
culture before we were multiracial. So this sort
Hmm.
of exclusive kind of dominant culture existed. Now, now the multiracial stuff pours in,
Yeah.
and a lot of the people that were of Ukrainian or Polish or German or other national descents.
Yeah.
That pressure, it's still there though. You know,
Hmm.
I can read in the paper where meet local media people, they use these German swipes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's still there, but
Yeah.
it's not as prominent.
Yeah.
We don't have Hogan's Heroes and all these things that were attacking German people.
Absolutely.
But either way, so now we're getting this leveling out of the racial stuff. I put a lot of thought in it. I knew you were going to come to
Hmm.
the show, and I knew this was going to be a possible topic. So
Right.
now, as white people, we have to realize that we're perceived as from that dominant culture, even though as white people in that remembering that culture, we weren't necessarily part of a lot of dominance. We were being dominated. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So either now we're here. So now we have to be sensitive, and there's a little bit of that getting that equilibrium. Like what
Yeah.
is a proper context for people to be, okay with being of white. And
Yeah. It should
what's
be
really
okay to
interesting.
be whatever you are. Right.
Yeah, but it's okay to be a white person and to flourish in the good things about
Hmm.
our race or whatever, our color. It's not even a race because we're all
Yeah.
people.
And
We're
what's not
kind,
okay.
we're kind, and we're joyful, and we're funny. We love community. And all the great things.
Yeah.
And just I'm waiting for that to come in,
Yeah.
and so I'm a little bit patient
Absolutely.
with the tension, but
Yeah.
it does scrape me a bit too.
Hmm.
Now on this
Absolutely.
pastor, or did you want to comment on something what I said there?
Well, just what you're saying, right? It is okay. But what's not okay is to give people preferential treatment of any kind based on their skin color. If we are
Mhm.
to live in an
Tough
equal
time.
society, then everyone else needs to be treated exactly equally. We all have equal
Yeah.
opportunity. We may not have equal results, right? So it's
Mhm.
not, so what I'm saying is that it's not okay to have extra benefits for one demographic and not for another.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
I
care
think
what.
these are
I
adjustments, right? These are adjustments.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, well,
and I
that's what
think
they
speaking out
call
against
them
them is right.
adjustments,
Yeah,
right? They call them adjustments. But as soon as one demographic of people is getting extra benefit
yeah.
and being given things and da 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 that's not available to other people, it, essentially somebody else is not getting treated equally to them.
I know it's
Right?
so hard.
And it's
It's so
okay to
hard.
help people. It's okay to have these programs and things to help people who are down and out, but it needs to be equal across the board for everyone, right?
It,
No
it's
preferential treatment at all for any
yeah,
demographic. A
yeah.
specific example of this that I've had discussions with people about when I talk about these kinds of things, and the claim that there is systemic racism. Well, show me the law. Show me the policy that is systemically racist. I agree that there can be racist people who work inside the system, but racism goes in all directions. It can be directed towards other people who are not people of color, right? So that's not really the point. The point is that there can be racist people within systems, right? But is the system itself racist? No, because there's no policy and there's no law. However, here in Canada, we do have one law that I know of that is definitely systemically racist, and it is not where you think it would be. There's a certain thing in the legal system here in Canada called the Glad You Act. And this is part of the criminal court system. And it is specifically geared towards Native Americans. Now, I have nothing against Native Americans, right? Or Native Canadians. But the thing is that this law basically says, well, because of the things that happened in history with Native people in Canada, okay, it was a terrible thing, right? And I agree that it was a terrible thing, but those things happened a long time ago. And not only that, but you still can't give someone preferential treatment based on skin color. But what this law does is it basically allows people who have committed it could be minor crimes, they could be absolutely horrific crimes, right up to things like attempted murder, pedophilia, rape charges. They can get these sentences greatly reduced based on their skin color. Now, how is that fair if somebody of a different skin color commits the exact same crime but gets a sentence that is 3 times longer because of their skin color?
Okay, hold on.
That
Hold
is
on. Let me. I just want to correct the direction of where you're going here, because if you go out to Quebec
Mhm.
and you visit some of the Huron and some of the Iroquois communities that are out there, you'll be you'd be think that you're amongst Caucasian people, but you're not, right? So
I agree.
it's not skin color. We're talking about a people who were militarily taken over and herded into lands, which in the end have been very, very valuable to them. But at that time, though, it was very small for what they were used to. And then they weren't really taken care of or helped, and they dwindled in numbers, and they've had a real hard time trying to identify what it means to be Canadian. You know what, the First Nations and the Aboriginal Indigenous people, man, their version of Canadian is awesome, and I'm all for it. But I understand the Gladu Act. I understand the Gladu Act, right? And I've seen it. I've seen the men that that are in the system, and it's hard for them now. So
yeah, I agree.
I understand. I understand the
just because you have a hard life, though, it's no excuse for your.
No, I know, but that's
a legal system that allows you to use past abuses or whatever things that happened in your life, to use that as an excuse to get your sentence reduced is ludicrous, right? As soon as you're giving people excuses, then that's people are going to exploit that to their best advantage, right?
But aren't they taking it out of
so now what, right?
Now
I can exploit that to my advantage, and right, instead of going to jail for 3 years, I might only get 4 months, right?
Okay, and that we've digressed, and you're using it as an example, and the example that I like, when I'm analyzing human beings, because it's sort of a contained experiment that is very poignant to me, or not poignant, very powerful to me.
Yeah.
And that's on the freeway, and it's normally down by Fox Drive. You know what I mean? Someone at 6:30 in the morning, whatever, there's a dog running across or a bear, who knows what's down the river valley, and they slam their brakes on, right? And I'm coming around 2.5 hours later, and everybody's still slowing down at that same spot. But the event happened 2 hours before, and I think that's the same with humans, and then in their social capacities and experience. And so as we try to come up with an inclusive culture that does not look at age, gender, race, or political or economic status, there's these places in our freeway that are jammed up. You know what I mean? And we have to learn to just keep moving through. So I understand, but I want to talk about the pastor.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pastor James Coates from Grace Life Community Church was recently arrested. He was put in handcuffs, he was put in shackles, he was put in chains. and he was brought off to the local remand center, a jail where there are high levels of drugs, assaults, and even people have been murdered there. And also in the jails, because of the coronavirus crisis, they have essentially been on 23.5 hour lockdown. And this man has done nothing wrong. All he has done is hold a church service and exercised his religious freedom in our country. Now, people can say whatever they want about these restrictions and whatever the government's doing, or make arguments about the virus or this and that. I'm not here to talk about any of those things. The point that I'm trying to make here is that there's this thing we have in Canada called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, religious freedom is enshrined. And when the government starts infringing on things like religious freedoms, or the rights for businesses to operate, or telling businesses how they must operate, when they can open, what kind of finances they can use, providing finance for the business, these things are signs of communism. The textbook definition for communism is that the government controls and interferes with the means, distribution, and production of goods and services. And what do we see the government doing with these restrictions? They are interfering. In some situations, they are controlling. In some situations, they are telling businesses that they have to shut down. And the government is interfering and controlling the means and productions of goods and services. And that is the textbook definition of communism. Go look it up. That's what the word communism means. And that's a scary thought. And then we come to see other things like pastors being arrested and thrown in jail, and pastors being fined, and pastors being silenced, having their voices silenced. We see doctors being silenced and threatened and under threat of losing their license to practice. So this is a serious problem, and something needs to be done about it.
So, if I may, do you think that his there's so many churches that are thriving with Zoom. They're growing. They're adding members, and they're
in some ways.
Hold on. And they're doing their ordinances. They're following the guidelines. Smaller groups. They're doing their baptisms and their blessings and their visits. This guy's got a big church. Do you think that he was just wanted people there so that he could keep the doors open?
I don't know about that. I think that he strongly believes in religious freedom, and that the government has no right or bearing to interfere with that religious freedom. And say that how many people that can attend your church service, or what kinds of things you can talk about in your church service, or how people can interact inside of your facility, right? When you're doing these things, you're interfering with religious freedom, and that's a problem, right? And that needs to be protected, and it needs to be respected by our government. The primary purpose of the government is to enshrine and protect our rights and freedoms, not take them away. That is the primary purpose of government. And Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the United States of America, said any man who would trade his liberties, his independent liberties, for temporary safety deserves neither liberty nor safety. Benjamin Franklin said that. Now, why would he say something like that? Well, because once you give your freedoms up, it's a very difficult thing to get back. And the founding fathers understood that. And the founding fathers in Canada understood that. right? The founding fathers of America, especially because they had been living under the tight iron grip of their British rulers, right? And they wanted their freedom. And the British, what did they come for? What did they come for? They came for their speech. They came for their guns. They came for their religious freedoms. These are the reasons why these things are in the American Constitution. The First Amendment, the right to free speech. The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. I can't remember which one enshrines religious freedom, right? I haven't studied the American Constitution to that extent. But that's why those things are there. And when you see governments taking those things away for any reason at all, I don't care what the reason is. If there was millions of people dying and dropping like flies all around us, they're not. Their survival rate is 98%, right? Even if people were dying by the millions like that, I still do not think it's okay for the government to interfere and restrict people's personal liberties and freedoms. Because once you give those freedoms to the government, they don't give them back. And history has proven it over and over and over and over again. The only way that the freedoms are won back ever is when they are paid for in blood. And that's very, very unfortunate. That's why we had World War I. That's why we had World War II. That's why we had the Vietnam War, because of the communists in Vietnam. That's the same thing in Korea. That's why the United States was involved in Korea, because of China and North Korea strongly imposing their communism on South Korea. And they managed to free South Korea. And South Korea is a much more better, more free, and more prosperous country today because of it. These freedoms that we have were paid for in blood by our ancestors in these wars. And
Okay.
when we
I'm
just
with you.
really give them up without any struggle, we're literally pissing on their graves.
I'm with you.
Terrible,
I'm with you.
terrible thing.
I understand. I totally understand. I just want to, for context sake, I want to shift the awareness of, because we're here in Canada, all right?
Yes, sir.
Our rights and freedoms come to us differently. You know, they don't come from revolution and civil war and how the Americans have formulated their concoction of civilization.
However, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms is very similar to what the United States has in their
But it's different.
and so are most Western nations, because all of these ideas, hang on, and all of these ideas and freedoms stemmed from European Judeo-Christian culture and Magna Carta. And that's where they initially came from, right? It happened in Britain too, right? And it happened in the rest of Europe when you had the Protestant church breaking off from the Catholics, right?
Our foundation of law is Her Majesty. She is law in Canada, and we have the right to enjoy freedoms. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we don't have inalienable rights. We have the enjoyment of right, and because our sovereign is Elizabeth,
that needs to change.
We've had great enjoyment of those rights. Okay, so, and they are reflected in the inalienable rights that the Americans claim. However, so now we've got this pastor who doesn't need to have church because he's going to have his tithes coming in and his offerings coming in. He doesn't have to meet the least.
Why doesn't he need to have church? What about the people?
Hold on. Just let me have the context. Okay, so he's calling his people together. Okay, so he, whether intentionally or just by sheer blind devotion to gathering together on a day, he's creating a herd immunity, right? It's because his people
I suppose in a sense you could say that. I think one funny thing about this whole crisis is that all of these people who go to these protests, all the anti-maskers and the people who are gathering together and ignoring the restrictions, Have any of them caught the virus? I'm
A
sure if
lot.
some, right? I'm
Lot.
sure if, I don't know about that. I'm sure if someone did who was very into these sort of movement kind of things, let's put it like that, ended up coming down with COVID-19, it'd be front page news everywhere. But we haven't seen that. And it's been a year now. It's been 11 months.
You know what?
Right?
To say, to even go there, I understand, but I think that's so past. I think each and every one of us knows somebody who's had COVID.
I've never
And
met a single person who has.
well, and then and know of people who have passed away.
I know of
I don't know. Maybe I know more people than average. You know what I mean? But either way, so now we have the pastor who's in the remand. He's getting treated the same as everybody else. There's no more of this. Go downstairs, sit behind glass, and your relatives come see you, or your friends or whatever. You sit in front of a video camera, and somewhere on the north side, the family goes there and they visit, and that's how they even do court. Now, I may be wrong. However, he's been offered bail, right?
Yeah, but he said he's not going to obey the restrictions because the restrictions that are imposing upon him are an infringement on his religious rights and freedoms. And he's standing up for those religious rights and freedoms, right?
Well, you know what? Then he can preach the gospel in the remand center. You know what? I've had built groups of 25 people when I went through my time. So if he wants to be a minister of God in the remand center, then he should start preaching the gospel there, because they'll let him. So
I suppose.
Well,
but the idea that he's thrown in there for holding a church service in the first place is ridiculous.
Maybe God wants him there. Maybe God wants him there.
Perhaps.
Maybe there's some men to take care of.
Maybe the government should respect his religious freedoms, right? I think that's the big deal here, right? These are things that need to be protected, because the only way that they are ever returned is when things get bad. And I'm not trying to say that that's what people should do. I'm trying to say that, we need to stop these kinds of things that are happening in their tracks before they go further, because
what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Down the road?
How are you going to stand? How are you going to stand? When they're there and they're in.
What
have you done? What have you done? Your pastor getting hauled out and chained. I didn't realize they ankle chained them too. Right?
Exactly. What are you going to do when the police come in and haul people out and chains?
The full thing,
which is what's happening. That's what's happening, right?
Was it hip cuffs? Was it hip cuff and ankle cuff, or just ankles and wrists?
Ankles and wrists.
The chains. They put them in the chains.
Right.
So, do you think that the government's trying to shut down the herds? You think they're trying to shut down the herds? They don't want all these people that are immune to COVID. They can just carry it and spread it everywhere.
I don't know. But it's funny, why are all the people that aren't wearing masks the ones who are immune?
Because they probably already had it and don't even know.
How many?
It's been around for a year. You only have it for 2 weeks.
It's been around for a year. How many cases of the flu have there been in the last 11 months? Probably I'll give you a hint.
How many?
Not 10, not 20, not 5, not 2, no, not even 1. 0.
There's no flu left.
No flu cases. 0 flu cases. Well, how many were there last year? I don't know, a couple thousand or something like that. That's funny. The flu just completely disappeared for the last 11 months. Not a single person has reported the case of the flu. That seems highly odd.
I don't know.
Normally, when there's 2,000 cases a year of something, there's I can understand a reduction in it, right? And whatever. Okay, so maybe there was only 600 this year instead of 2,000 or whatever. But 0?
Or people
that's a statistical not a statistical improbability. That's a statistical impossibility. I
know that's an exaggeration, because I know people who've had the flu that went to the doctor worried that they had COVID.
Look it up. Where's the reported flu cases?
They're out there, man. The flu's still there.
Go look it up. Yeah. I did.
So that's so that's good. So in closing, I guess we could say, my question is, isn't white a color? Aren't we all people of color? I look forward to the day that white people are accepted as people of color too. I think that's the easiest solution, right? Just let us back in. And as far as church goes, I feel for this guy, man. I was,
feel
you
for his
know, it's
family.
like, and I don't know why he took the stance that he did. I don't know why that he pushed. I don't think that anyone wanted to do anything, and they just wanted people to be safe. And I can't be in his head. I can imagine this is going to create in that Grace Life community. This is one of those events on their freeway, right?
Yeah.
This organization is going to be affected 100 years from now,
The
150 years
freeway
from now.
towards communism.
In the history of this church, they'll still talk about the day that they took their pastor away in chains to jail.
Right.
Let's hope nothing happens to him in there, man.
Yeah. That's Canada in 2021, man. They're taking pastors away to jail in change.
There's good work to be done in there, though. There's the gospel needs to be preached in Pilate's remand too, right? That's where Jesus was in Pilate's remand. Yeah. That's where he won our victory. You know that? Yeah. Nothing wrong with going to remand if you're a man of God. There's lots of work to do. The People's Voice with the Conservative Commentator, Adam Stevenson. Thank you, sir.
Amen, brother.